Very good evening to all of you. Thank you for coming here for what's going to be a very interesting talk. I can make that claim because I've had a number of interesting chats with Mr. Manoj Srivastava, who's here, distinguished fellow at the JSW School of Public Policy here at the Institute, and also an IAS officer, a ranker, a top ranker of the 1980 batch. And Mr. Srivastava retired in 1985, 2015, after 35 years. Wonderful, I retired him 30 years before he was due. 2015.
You did the right job, I should have retired much.
Just an indication that he could have done better things elsewhere. Anyway, after a distinguished career of 35 years, he was again asked to do a lot of work for the government for about 2 years. And after that, beginning 2018, he's been helping us out in a number of ways. His first visit to the Institute was unfortunately very brief because Mr. Srivastava had to go back on account of a family emergency. But during his subsequent visits, we've had a number of interesting conversations about governance, and that's his area of interest. So let me request our director, Professor Errol D'Souza, to welcome Mr. Srivastava and say a few words.
So it's a pleasure to welcome Mr. Srivastava here. We have many common friends, and so there's lots of conversations which are exceedingly deep when we meet. And I've always, as Vijay said, enjoyed our conversations on many topics of contemporary interest. So thank you for coming to give this lecture, and we look forward to it and to our continued interaction.
Thank you.
I'm not going to repeat what is already there in the announcement, but one of my earliest memories of your work is the Bihar Education Project. But by the time I went to study that project, you had already left. He's done a number of other things. I'm not going to go into those. But there is this book called Seeing the Government. Governmentality in India.
The state, governance and governmentality.
Governance and governmentality in India. Whenever you get a chance, please take it out from our library and go through it. It's required reading for all public systems doctoral students. Okay. So let me invite Mr. Srivastava to give his talk. You can use that.
Sure. Yeah, so I hope I'm audible. Truly a great pleasure and privilege to be with you this evening. As a matter of fact, I'm in a way a part of this institution, and particularly the JSW School of Public Policy. And so to give a talk from this platform is not as if I'm an outsider, but I am, as a part of it, I really wanted that, this opportunity would give me ways to interact with you, to have a two-way learning. Whatever modest work that I did in academics, trust me, and I have said it during my superannuation time after 35 years to my IAS colleagues, that if I would ever become, which I will never become, the Prime Minister or the CM, I would do one legislation, and that is all IAS officials must go out compulsorily and do a serious, grounded ethnographic research. Because the kind of humility that you have and you develop after that Why? Because mostly, best of the intentioned people, when they work very hard and obsessed with doing things, they believe they're doing original works. It's only when you go out and come to know many of illustrious people like you and scholars, that what you thought to be the best original work was done by 20 people 50 years back. And that's the one I developed a kind of a conviction, and hence always in such talks I believe that a two-way exchange, a critical constructive engagement is the only way to develop the knowledge. With this, I once again really sincerely thank all of you. You're all from the same alma mater, so as I said, we have some deep conversations beyond public policy, and all colleagues and faculty from the Executive Council, Anish and Professor Chan to have taken special trouble to organize this, and really privileged to see young minds as well as other scholars and faculty people to be present here. Thank you so much. And please permit me to sit down, keep coming here. I feel more kind of interactive when I am in that position rather than, lecturing, because I have always been on the receiving side of lecturing in the academic institutions, and I'm not really used to and do not have the capacity to do that. So please forgive me, but do allow me to interact with you from that place. Thank you. Thank you once again. So, I'm not going to take you in the debate on the governance and how, a period of Washington consensus where, a huge argument that, a state must withdraw, there should be a minimalist state and things like that, and it's the market which will be taking over, it's the market which really makes the right decisions, and the public policies have failed. And the great mandirs of Jawaharlal Nehru, the public policy institutions, have become the white elephants and drained the resources. So it's all market. And it took a number of years for scholars like Theda Skocpol at Harvard, bringing the state back in, and even the World Bank institutions, when they studied those who really propagated this, that, the East Asian miracle was just not the market. It had a very important role of state, but a different role and a different avatar that's called, enabling state rather than commanding state. And you cannot really take out the state and market complementarity role, which if you read Danny Roderick's work, there will also be, that's all established there too. I just want to say to you, without going into those details in this thing, that it's amazing, as a social sciences student, both in JNU and onwards, and over years, if you have read Thomas Kuhn's, the paradigm change in natural sciences, the way the social science thing happens, it seems to me, and I may be subject to correction or debate, is that, there is a wisdom, but for a certain period, that wisdom, which is established wisdom, which has an evidence, perhaps incontrovertible, gets completely buried down, and then another cycle, it emerges, and this is a cyclic process of knowledge. So does it really sometimes, and I wonder whether we really advance all this debate on state being brought in, and the one on whose theory we believe that the markets are the supreme, the power of invisible hand, he himself wrote many years before. And many of those who know Adam Smith's work know that he clearly postulated that without a state which can establish rule of law, fairness and justice, no market can flourish. So why did we require to come back to what Adam Smith had told himself, and why did we? Anyway, so that's a different intellectual debate as to what happens cyclically. But having established this, that the state is important, the question was that the question was, okay, so if the state is important, it should be governing well, good governance. Again, my personal take, you may disagree. I again never understood, that is there a state as a concept, as a reality the state can function badly, corrupt ways and etc. But as a state which we read about the contract between people, the sovereign willpower of the people and etc., can it ever be a state which can be perverse or bad? So why do you have to say good governance? But anyway, that's the kind of, big debate. Good governance is back on agenda. What is good governance then? And, you look at these, I'm not going to go into it. If you read this, oh, well, it's about transparency, it's about accountability, it's about honesty, it's about, justice, it's about rule of law, everything which is there. You know what I found? I'm sorry. How did it get off? Oh, okay, thanks, sorry. Brilliant. Sometimes, you go back to this old Nana, Nani, sometimes they say, Purane logon ka wo gyan bahut. And I said, so much of theoretical things that I read, in LSE and Cambridge about good governance. This is a great Chinese saying which says, black cat or white cat, if it can catch mice, it's a good cat. So it's a good governance, which one catches mice. But what is it catching? What does it do if it can catch, whether it's good or bad, whatever, but if it does that, what is that? And, it's all again, घूम फिर के एक वही बात repeated. A good governance, the one which delivers well, it is a great policy, but the delivery is the issue, the implementation is the issue. There's a lot of corruption, a lot of mutations. You cannot recognize what you design at the ground. It's a huge force of state in petty bureaucrats and etc. who will completely loot away. So honesty, impartiality, accountability. Look at the second Administrative Reforms Commission. It's one of the great works, I tell you, and one of my batchmates, Jayaprakash, who set up, Lok Satta in Andhra Pradesh, was one of the members of the second Administrative Reforms Commission. And you will find all this, But amazing, if you really concentrate on all of them. Truly, it's about delivery and implementation. And there's something which is hidden. Have we understood? I don't know, I'm going to raise that as a first central question. And that is, there's something to be delivered. That something is great. Everything goes wrong at the ground level when it is to be implemented. So you must be honest, you must be accountable, you must do the things in transparency and all, etc. Nutshell, deliver well. That's what, if the cat can have this quality, it's going to catch the mice. But what to deliver? Really, friends, I really ask you as a public policy scholars, have your researchers, have your experiences, have you really questioned what are we delivering? What is that policy that we are delivering? Honestly and impartiality. Why? The answer is why? Of course, the excellent policies. It's a sacrosanct principle that we are making excellent policies. And imagine, I being an IAS officer, have worked in my own ways and with my own commitments and principles, but being a part of that organization, which is so recently, a brilliant scholar of Harvard, Land Pritchett, and his article, which the reference is given here, and Dongre and Professor Yamini Iyer, who was an illustrious speaker from this platform, and when she spoke about the everyday governance of the Bihar, and the example was the Bihar education, small education, this thing, etc. They all lauded this work, where, and I should be the happiest person when he writes that the IAS is full of officers who have passed an entrance examination and selection process that makes getting into Harvard look like walk in the park. And he's teaching at Harvard. And the brains of Indian state can formulate excellent policies and programs in nearly every domain. Wow, the head is so strong, it can even remain in teetering control of the mountain of official paperwork. The maintenance of the appearance of the function, of those programs requires no one who has visited the offices of senior IAS officers, etc. Basically, this is the brain who are occupying that brain space, mostly the IAS officials. They themselves are extremely brilliant. So there's bound to be a great policy which is being made by the Indian state. The brain is superb. And therefore, what land pension says is that, but what happens? And yet, the Indian state to implement programs and policies in police, tax, collection, education, health, power, water supply, nearly every routine service, there's rampant absenteeism, indifference, incompetence, and corruption. And here is the central argument by Land Princeton. I argue that India today is a flailing state. You know the flailing? That, the hands and limbs are kind of, uncontrollably shaking and doing things, without a control of the mind. And that's what he says, that it's elite institutions at the national and some states level remain sound and functional, but that this head is no longer reliably connected via nerves as sinews to its own limbs. So individually, I should be very happy. At least my functions have been praised as an individual IAS officer. And it's all those petty staff and officials who have been doing all the mischief. Really, the first critical question, are the policies knowledge-driven? The policies that we are considering sacrosanct and we are implementing, and we say, well, if we honestly implement it, it'll be all done so great. Are they really knowledge-driven? How are we making that policies? Have you opened the black box of policy making in this country? In 1980, when we joined this service, in fact, well, this is small, lighter vein, incidental sharing with you that in the 1980s, 70s, towards the end when we were in JNU, great times if you young people, if you have read about that, the Jayaprakash Narayan movement, the total revolution movement. So, we were all, as youth of every time, there's a romanticism about change the world and we will demolish all the injustice and etc. And I am from Bihar and JP from that area and going to his, meetings and all. We have grown into that phase and we thought that, state, oh my God, that's so anti-people, so regressive. We must trample it down under our feet as a revolutionary. And in JNU, one of my classmates, Sujata, who is wife of my very close friend, Tripurari, who is Bihar cadre, will come out when we'll see the force, Delhi police jeep outside the road, and she'll throw a mighty throw of stone, which will fall just few inches below, but we'll go and celebrate that we have finally made the Delhi police run away and we have trampled the state. That was the kind of. But when I decided to come into service because of my personal reason, my father premature died and every middle class family has this thing. I thought, now how to justify I'm going to go into the same state where I thought I will trample down under my feet? The JP's statement. If you implemented the policies, if you implemented the laws, if you ensured the power of the state to establish level playing field for the poor, you have done a mini revolution. So, well, I thought, let's do the revolution from within. And the great programs of those times, if anybody who has, you cannot really simply, whatever scholarship that you will do, and most solid work, but you cannot feel that passion when the IRDP and the NRAPs were the ones which we young people, and I said, oh my God, this is a revolution. The poor people, the integrated rural development program. What is that? It's about giving them a small productive asset which they cannot have because of problem of poverty and etc. No bank will give them a loan because of the problem of collateral security. Here is the government program which has envisaged them, and they will earn the money, they will pay back the EMI because there will be a 50% subsidy, the interest rate will be subsidized, it's a proprietary lending scheme, and they will come out of the poverty. IRDP was that. So a huge amount of thoughts had gone in. Those were not the times. I am not arguing that they were completely thoughtless shaping of the policies. I am myself wondered, and it's my evolving, my work in progress, as to how even those times when there was people like that, if the economists are here, they would know the great scholars, Dantwala and Neelkant Rath. There was huge debate between IRDP self-employment and NREP wage employment. The avatars of it is the Employment Assurance Scheme and Manrega today. And the avatars of the self-employment scheme is, SGSY, Sampurn Gramin Rojgar Yojana, Swarojgar Yojana, and the National Rural Livelihood Mission, But this all started there. and they would debate as to which one will be the right one. So there's a lot of thinking which went. So IRDP was the one we really put in our entire youth to implement. And really we thought that, yes, it's a wonderful policy. We assumed, whenever questioned, we perhaps were not capable to question at that time. We were, 24, 25 years old then when we got into IAS and we became district magistrates within a few years. We said, oh, this program. Only when we got the dairy, the milk animal to this house, the Jerseyan breed cow, 25 liters NABARD economics was given to us. 25 liters, 40% domestic consumption, rest is saleable, they will sell it at the best price of 10 rupees, whatever at that time. There will be an into that surplus amount, then this will be the cost of maintenance of that Jerseyan breed cow, minus that, therefore the gross revenue is this much, this is the installment which will have to be paid, after that this much, into 6,400 was the poverty line at that time. Oh my God, they will all just go above the poverty line. And we thought we'll change the face of the earth. We thought this is the policy, the great policy. And let me tell you, when I started moving into the villages, huge amount of corruption. Khuta badli. What is khuta badli? Have you heard about it? There'll be no real transaction. There'll be no milk animal which will be purchased. And that villager, the bank officials and the block officials will, bring somebody's, if there's an inspection, that somebody else's cow will be shown there, and, the entire money will be passed on, 50% subsidy will be released, the entire loan amount will be immediately returned to the bank. There's no NPA, there is no Chokski or whatever Nirav Modi, this is all ideal return, and and then 50% subsidy amount is shared among the beneficiaries and the bank officials, etc. The beneficiaries are poor, so a little bit of something will be given to them. Corruption. They are selling off their cows and marrying their daughters. I thought that great ground economist. No economist can parallel this poor who decided to sell off that, because this would have been such a great burden on them. Did those great thinkers at that time think that deep inside the villages, forgive me for this, forgive me this slide, this is not properly animation done, so I'll just read this. What happens? Okay, yeah. So, think of it, a block, 50 to 60 square kilometers radius. And deep inside, the poorest of it was to be chosen. If you looked at the way of defining poverty and the way of identification of the poor, which is again a big debate now when it's a free universal income is being thought as to how you will define the poor. The poorest was to be given the first. The poorest will be the musahars, the most lowly section of the society. They will be deep inside where the communication will not be there. There will be road, Khandar. And that place a Jerseyan cow is given. Think of a Ramraj. An honestly Jerseyan cow is given to that place. Where is the market? If you will see the rural areas, in the bucket with the pual, they travel from a village to a nearest urban center if it is possible to be traveled so that it doesn't spill over. But before it gets fermented, to go to mithai shops to sell. Inside deep 30 kilometers away from the urban center, where is the market? Where they will sell and get the 10 rupees. Was it thought? Can it be possibly thought? It was then, think of it. That Jerseyan breed cow, they're not used to looking after that. That's a desi cow that they look after. So, if there was any illness in that, they wouldn't have a desi sense to try and do something to that desi cow. So what will happen? There's this 50 square kilometer radius. You will see this block headquarter. Here is the village. And from there is one BHO, just one BHO over a population 20 panchayats, 70,000 to 1 lakh population, approximately to 50-60 kilometer, just about 6 VLWs, etc. One block animal husbandry officer. and he will travel 2 days to reach to block to just tell me, mera guy bimar pad gaya hai. And he will take 10 days to reach, even if he is an honest person, because he has to cater to this. By the time the entire biological damage permanently is done, the 15 liters, 25 liters of the yield calculated in the great Nabad economies has gone down to 5 liters. So even if you had a market, it is all gone. And then I can never forget this. It's a life changing impact on me. That as per the instruction of then the Chief Justice of India, P.N. Bhagwati Sahab, and we, the 6 IAS officials, were constituted a team. One K.B. Saxena is a great person, very senior. So he was ordered by him because of his reputation of being pro people, and so he constituted a team. We were doing this survey of the bonded laborers in the deep inside villages of Deoghar district, which is in Jharkhand. And the order of the Supreme Court was that while finding out whether they're bonded or not, and therefore allowing the act to then unfold and to declare them free, you must also think about a rehabilitation program for them. And in the process, when I talked to those poor people, the bonded laborers, block se aapko kuch mila hai kya? So that I can think about a rehabilitation plan from that to develop it, and then submit it to the Supreme Court. And here's that person who told, you can read that, that, Babu, let me say it in Hindi. I'm sure not everybody knows Hindi, so I'll translate that, So, Babu, देखिए ना ये हाथ से इतना बड़ा गाय दे दिया बाबू, हम लोग का घर इतना छोटा है, उसमें घर में घुसिए नहीं पाया, बाहर जाड़ा बरसात में रह के मर गया. So just it is stayed outside. It couldn't enter because the tribal hut. So that's why I really took a Jason from the Google and I took a tribal hut. Amazing. These are the great mind of the IAS. Oh, they can handle everything. Land Prichard. And this elementary thing we did not. Who says this is elementary? These are very subtle knowledge. This develops as the policies get implemented. So don't berate your own tribe. Don't counter land ministers who are so really truly enamored by the great brains of India, which you comprise, etc. So that will be the kind of one of the answers, and this is true. There's a deep question of learning and understanding and changing policies as you go on. But was that the case? The marketing, the animal husbandry, the shelter, and it is that time, one man with his team. And I chose the western region of India to go for Bharat Darshan in IAS, as you know. ICS time it used to really be Bharat, but now it's 6 parts or 4 parts. And I chose western part only to meet, because of as a young person like you, I was reading about them, Korean and Bankar Roy. So Tilonia, Rajasthan, and we went to Anand, great state. We met at the young professionals of IAS, 40, 50 of them Korean. And at that time, my dear friends, I saw that by a simple calculation, 3 paisa less per liter that was paid by the cooperatives to their milk producers, the members, the services which was organized was that in every place there will be a wireless fitted van with an animal husbandry person. And in 12 o'clock midnight, if the farmer will inform that my this thing is sick, that wireless fitted van and doctor will immediately rush. So the animal husbandry connection at the ground level was done like that. The marketing, as you know, amazing. This is the only way this marketing could be possible when you have to take out the milk from the interiors. The refrigerator vans going into the chilling centers, then going into the, what is that called, packaging centers, and then, finally at that drop of milk from the interior of the village of Bihar, where I was the managing director of Sudha, we could see that was going into deep interiors of Jharkhand and being sold there, but while being, produced in Purnia. And we thought we can do it, every individual micro poor person, we can do it and give it, and he will be doing the marketing, he will be doing the. So this one person I could understand this and do it, and the entire brain of India could not. And that is why I think rightly Lal Bahadur Shastri give him great honor to Korean and said, please come and set up the National Dairy Development Board. He didn't get the IAS officer there. Look, I mean, there are great people in IAS. I myself say I worked hard. So it's not about, I'm not really, please don't mistake me. I'm talking about the deep, I'll come to that deeper institutional issues because of which the really right intention people with great ability to do hard work may perhaps miss, bringing that knowledge input, which is so essential for making the policy to work. So, this is just a quick run of this. Every state will have this kind of, an NDDB thing which is there. And that's the contrast by which one can argue that knowledge and that dovetailing and that forward and backward linkages at the grounded level was possible even at that time. It wasn't very a complex understanding. The first critical question, sorry, are we learning? Oh, sorry. So where was that? I think the first question was about as I said, is it knowledge driven? And then I gave you the example of the IRDP. Please, can you help me? I think I have just quickly crossed the, just let me see. Okay, that was not first, the second. I was giving you this example of the IRDP. There are many other examples. I will quickly tell you one. You will be amazed to hear this, that in the recent times, and I am personally privy to this, 1,500 crores. By the way, before I come to this, let me tell you, do you have an idea that this great IRDP scheme, for which hum logon ne apni jawani de di, thinking that we are going to do a revolution and bring remove the poverty, with this kind of an input of knowledge, or the lack of input of that knowledge. 79, 80 it started. 99, the IRDP in its own shape, but these are just a little bit of changes, avatars in SGSY. In 19 years, 55 million people. The last 99 cumulative figure is about 385 billion rupees invested in this program year after year, year after year. And as district magistrate and DDCs, we found that, the planning commission and others and everybody will look into it and say, oh, but this is all because of the wrong selection of beneficiaries, because of the corruption, because of the cuts and commission of the bankers, etc. You must do it more fairly, you must do it more honestly, etc. And then, people have not gone above the poverty line, so give them a booster dose. So an additional amount will be invested, will be given to them, the loan. The loan was not the issue. The money or the working capital at the moment was not the issue. It was the marketing which you couldn't have possibly linked unless you had a Korean type of, layers of structures. But the loan and amount were dispersed. 3,850 crore in 99, and if you really do a simple 5% inflation calculation from 1980 onward, it's a huge amount. And if you look at these are data available straight on Planning Commission, authentic government data. CAG's reports would authenticate it. 60% are the dairy. This was the most popular scheme at that time. 60% under the same milk animal scheme where I told you that even a Ram Raj would have not ensured that scheme to succeed. Destined to fail. Stuart Corbridge and I, as in a scholarly relationship for many years, he has written a paper, Destined to Fail or Designed to Fail. Sometimes the policies can be made unconsciously, unintentionally, but they can be designed to fail. And we are talking about the implementation. In this feudal culture in India, amazing, just see the correlation between this, what is said. There are only 3 posts in the bureaucracy, you will hear, or in the government sector. There are only 3 posts in India, PM, CM, and DM. Right? Why no principal secretary? Why no cabinet secretary? DM, because he is implementing. Everything is in the implementation. Whatever is coming is God-given with the brain. So a DM is the one who implements it so well, he catches mice. So the 3 things are known. I remember when I was in the IAS Academy and started this thing, then the retired cabinet secretary, which is the highest post in the civil service. There's only one post in India. We all have retired Chief Secretary and Secretary Government of India. There's only one in the 5,000, every batch, 120 or 2-3 batch, who will become the Cabinet Secretary. And he came to give us the lecture. We were all, as young people, Cabinet Secretary of India is going to tell us. And he started his lecture. 40 years before, he didn't say that. When I was the district magistrate, and we were shocked. This gentleman, who must have assisted the Prime Minister, he doesn't have anything to say on these. And says, when I was the district magistrate, and he said about 40 years ago, what innovation he did in implementation. And what innovation can you make that dairy milk succeed? Milk channel succeed. Okay, but the second critical question. So this is a great puzzle, which when you have the knowledge, as Kurian had, when you can foresee the issues, you cannot dovetail it into the policy. You cannot make that policy work by only integrating what you know. Why? That's one. But that is, according to me, a relatively huge failure, but an easy one to understand. There can be a very difficult area of public policy making where, the complex issues of how they are shaped, how learnings must come back from the field, and then, on the way as you go, you devise, or maybe you bring up new policies. That's the one, is most complex, and that's the question. That was the question by mistake, as I wrote first, and I said, do we learn on the way and, evolve the policies? 3 examples. And that's my deep research, which I did in Madhya Pradesh, in deep inside villages, GRY, Education Guarantee Scheme, and Watershed Mission. What is that? Just quickly, I have to run that. This is GRY, Rajiv Gandhi, in that year, I think 1990. Great PM. We interacted as a DM-PM workshop, and the constitutional amendment 73rd was the result of that 500 DMs directly interacting with him and talking about how to change the governance issues and people's participation. But, he took a big, what I call in public policy making, one of the biggest challenges that the policymakers have to face is that all honest knowledge input, and there will be a certain point after which there's absolutely nothing in social science to give you a clue about the knowledge as to whether things would work or not. And what is called at that stage, and there's a lot of serious work, including James Menor work, comparing China's and India's case in that, leap of faith. This is an entirely scholarly concept of leap of faith. GRY was a leap of faith. By that time, there was a huge evidence that the Weberian bureaucratic model has kind of collapsed. The district magistrate, the great power, and he will vertically make everybody, oversight, check it, inspect, fear, terror, deterrence. They will work, they will report. Nothing is working. So there was a new experiment that was thought. Let's bring in people. They are bureaucrats. So I have worked out, myself developed a model. Slightly cumbersome that you may not be able to follow. Simple point is that the whole Weberian bureaucracy was that there are bureaucrats, they are accountable through vertical system accountability to seniors. They have what is that interest and incentive relationship? Their interest is to rise above the career, to get promoted further, to get into a promoted IAS cadre, etc. So they will behave properly, the job will be given, they must do it well, they will do it because of that interest, etc. And what if that interest and incentive misalignment takes place, as it happened? No, I don't want to get promoted. I want to earn crores of rupees, and happily, you dismiss me, I will make my life, happy. So what do you do this? The solution was, which was thought by the GRY. That's the underlying principle. You wouldn't find this, in the paper, but that's the underlying principle. As a matter of leap of faith, this policy was made. And let me give you an idea as to how much of money went into it by this leap of faith. But a very honest leap of faith, where it was said, and think of it, if somebody comes and argues, but look, all this money goes into the village. If the village people, through their decentralized body, that is the Panchayati Raj, where they were elected, are the ones who are made complete in control of that money, and they will devise the small construction programs, etc. the question of misalignment of interest and incentive will never take place. It's called in economics, in the principal-agent relationship, it's a self-driven, incentive-compatible scenario. Because you see, look, I have to make that little road, because if I don't, it is my father, I have to carry them on khatia to go to a nearest PHC by the time he dies, because of just that particular thing not being made. And the BDOs and the contractors being corrupt, they never make that, etc. So if the same villagers are given the money and said, now you decide about among yourself, what is the priority of that village, and he will, fantastically should do. Why further? Even if there is a deviation by anybody, if you read Douglas North's work on the question of, transaction costs, I mean, this is one great economist I think I have read who has talked about, how Western capitalism grew, and he talked about the entire concept of transaction cost, and he said that the vertical accountability system, the principal-agent relations, is a huge transaction cost of information, cost of enforcement, and cost of externality. You cannot know what your video or the junior engineer is doing. It's so difficult for a DM, even if he's honest, or one fewer officers. So huge cost. Here, the villagers are themselves. There's an elected mukhia, sarpanch, the others who are doing it. All the villagers are right there. Every morning they're passing and seeing that road being done, the kharanja. Zero transaction cost. Lateral accountability. Get the people. Interest incentive aligned. Transaction cost so low. Ideal scenario. So I did a research to see how much that leap of faith based on this so appealing, so pro-people, an argument for which the policy was made. And remember, at that time, NREP and RLGP used to be the great employment generation program, the debate that I showed you of Rath and Dandekar. And at that time, I don't remember exactly, about 300 billion or something, both merged and additional money which was mobilized, 17,000 something crores was the one with which the GRY started. But several lakh panchayats and villages and all, that money for, when I traced, from 1992 to 1999, by which time the GRY then changed to some other program, it was 230 billion rupees for 7 years under GRY. I was doing research in Madhya Pradesh, how much it came to Madhya Pradesh. That pie chart that I show was about all the states distribution, and then the 3 research districts, Rewa, Mandla and Neemuch, and finally to their panchayats, which I was doing the ethnographic research. Ultimately 230 billion finally when I traced, they all came, they were not looted away. There was a completely wrong perception that 1 rupees goes and 15 paisa reaches. They all came, they were accounted for. And this is nothing, this is a CAG's report, confirmed that they all came down to 1,12,000 rupees for one panchayat, 2,54,125. But remember, it is 1990. So at least 5-10 times, it will be of today's purchasing value. But therefore, there was a considerable amount of the money with this thing. I can't go into details, but I can just tell you, before I go to EGS, that, NREP and RLGP is the one as a district magistrate we used to implement, and huge vertical accountability issue, huge transaction costs, etc. And yet you will find traces of those NREP schemes at those times. Some roads built, a little pakka one, grade 1 metal, some buildings done, school buildings, community will. Deep inside villages when I moved, absolutely traceless GRY, completely siphoned off. And in the streets of Madhya Pradesh, I heard what people said about that program. JRY, matlab jeb kharch I. So they made a literally lyric, I, Y. So, the JRY, if the JRY comes, pocket expenses thrive. This whole 230 billion, not a trace. This is a huge ethnographic issue of an everyday governance as to how those mukhias who were elected treated this GRY as a fund, because that came there. And the one chief minister whom I interviewed and I found an extremely progressive person was Digvijay Singh. I mean, in terms of, of course, politics and everything is there. But the one, do you know, the one person as a politician, I can tell you and I can share this with you honestly, that as a civil servant, committed to the honesty principles, etc., will shudder to make that policy document, where he made first original idea of social audit. And official circular was issued in the Vijay Singh Times that for up to 50,000 rupees, which became later 1 lakh, when the villages do that scheme under the JRY, up to that cost, there'll be no junior engineer who will go and measure it, which was the necessary norm and audit requirement that he went and measured that this much of work was done. Then the second installment was released. No. People's social audit. So in Gram Sabha and in the Panchayat, if the people stood and said, no, but I have seen that Kharanja road being built, I know enough materials were done, I totally trust that was done correctly, that's the social audit. Done, passed, give him the money. This was all this faith that people, because of their own interest, will do it. It is precisely because of the lack of the bureaucratic, even the junior engineers used to take in cuts and commission. My people came, they interviewed, they said, पहले वाला समय अच्छा था, कम से कम कुछ डर रहता था जूनियर इंजीनियर को, तो थोड़ा बहुत कमवा हो जाता था. Now it's social audit, the Mukhya taken away, finished. Who is questioning? Who is questioning because the people are dependent on that Mukhya and Sarpanch for their economic this thing? That was thought like this, it was done like this. So this is all about that great revolutionary thing we did with Rajiv Gandhi in 5 workshops, DM, PM, which created a big uproar at that time and said, it's bypassing, is trampling down the federal structure, and the PM is directly talking to DMs, if you remember that time. It was a big, and all CMs were kind of very, this thing, what is happening now, he's going to rule directly through Delhi with the DMs and all. And that one of the greatest focus was that, Bavarian bureaucracy is not working, what is the solution? And we've all, I was the one who said, but let the people take over. Without having any knowledge base, without having any understanding. It was difficult because there was no research at that time about decentralization. Nothing to be found on ground to say, whether this will work or not. There were positive cases also even today. But with that kind of a difficult scenario, how do you make the policies? You make it with a leap of faith, no problem. What is my question? My question is, but then you do not learn. Why do you not learn? And I will come to that quickly. And I have seen an interview of Errol in India today, where he said, we are wired to reinvent ourselves. So that's how I have, I was very attracted to this. Okay, so this JRY, people's participation, interest and incentive alignment, lateral accountability system, no transaction cost, ideal zero cost of information, zero cost of enforcement, Gram Sabha will audit, will enforce this, etc. This is the reality. And, what is happening? I'm going ulta. That's what these policies were also doing, ulta. So, okay. Same Madhya Pradesh. Commonwealth Great Innovation Award, Education Guarantee Scheme. All right? And it was one of the most talked about scheme at that time of the Vijay Singh, and he was the one who believed in that Panchayat Raj so much that when the 1993 that decentralization things were passed, he was the first chief minister to implement the Panchayat Raj in Madhya Pradesh. But he also had this idea of people's collective at parallel to these elected bodies, and he said, we will experiment with that. And this is Education Guarantee Scheme. What was the idea? No. It's just not the question of only the elected people. They may sometimes be corrupt. They may have some power. The Vijay Singh's one bhashan was, we had thought that we will bring Panchayati Raj, but we never thought that we will bring Sarpanch Raj. Sarpanch is Mukhya. They were distorting. So let people, community, the whole community, no elected person, they will own, they will drive, they will keep the accountability. Community driven, community owned. That was the philosophy. But ultimately remember, the underlying analysis will be that is going to minimize the lateral transaction cost, and that will ensure a much ideal incompatibility between incentive and interest. Question of deviance of the agents in relation to principal relation will not arise. That's one quick summary of that. And what a claim at the time, and that's how I started my research from London School of Economics as as a Jamshedji Tata Fellow on poor governance in India, and 31,000 Gurujis have been appointed by the community. They own them, they control them. 20,000 schools were opened in just 5 years, whereas the government schools were opened in 50 years, 30,000. That's the great, when it's community driven, when it's a demand driven, when it's owned by people, and no question of absenteeism and etc. What Lance Pritchard said, oh, your petty bureaucrats are all corrupt and absent, etc. No, but they're community owned, so absenteeism is not there, nothing is there. Why? Because not only the community has owned it and they have they have started it, but they have their SMCs, school management committees, PTAs, Patient Teachers Association. That's the one who goes, checks, enforces moral pressure, social pressure, everything on the Guruji, and Guruji is being paid under the overall supervision and control of the community. So how come they will not respond to that? I again thought it was a great leap of faith, and logically, theoretically, if the community, the whole community is brought in, can there be a better controller than the Panchayati Raj? Knowledge of the process of Guruji's appointment. 80% said, we just didn't know how the Gurujis were appointed. And few of them said, Sarpanch appointed him. He appointed his Rishtedar. He took some money and appointed him. Even the youth who were jobless, they came and managed all the paperwork and showed it on the paper that this community is this thing, and got themselves a job of Guruji. And this great communities, representative SMCs and PTAs, is that, yeah. In that, the idea was that, you have the parents, people who will be there, you will be poor women will be there, all stakeholders whose children are studying will be there, etc. And this was a very difficult exercise to do that research, You cannot get it in data. You have to really create the confidence of the people. I do encourage you to do some kind of serious ethnographic research. And there, basically the story is, is that, 70, 80 people simply just didn't know what is SMC, what is PTA. So much so that in Rewa district, I was sitting in Sarpanch's house, and his brother was the Guruji, and he called one of the small farmers and said, "Ab bataiye inko, kitna acha hum log ka chal raha hai, etc." And he had already told me that he is vice president of that PTA. So he was just sitting, that poor little chap, was idle, and I said, "But aap to sab kaisa chal raha hai? You are the vice president with the..." "Kya sir, konchi ka? Jo स्कूलवा देखने का सब बना हुआ है, भोजपुरी स्टाइल, यू अंडरस्टैंड साफ. सो सो कहता है हम भी इसमें है का, am I also in this? And this Guruji has such a red face, he never expected that this answer will come from him. He would be generally under the subservience and all that. So this, and the proceedings. You look at the MIAs of the education system, management information system, computerized. So many VCs formed. Means people's participation has been great. And then reporting, so many meetings of VCs happening. I looked at this proceeding register of that meeting. I somehow encouraged him to show me. I used to never give my identification, I would say that I am, doing a research in LSC, etc. And they would say, this is a harmless man. If I would have told them that I'm an IAS officer, they would have never said anything to me. So I'll just go alone, and so I said, I'm padh likh raha hu, aapka dukh sukh. I'll bring your dukh sukh in the world and share it, outside. So they will say, sab suniye, dekhiye, yehi ho raha hai. So the proceeding, every time that proceeding had this similar 4 lines, everything is fine, falana, but the Guruji is not being paid properly, his salary should be increased. Every time the PTA sat, they wrote these 4 lines. So I said, this is the story of this SMC. And so, भाई क्या है, क्या हम करते रहते हैं, वही जो करते रहते थे पहले भी, फिर उल्टा जा रहा है क्या? Sorry. Okay, so what else? Okay. So I found out all members I listed out deep inside the tolas I visited, talked to them, etc., and then discovered the relationship. The chairman, the Guruji, are maternal cousin. And his bhavi, sister-in-law is there, his bhagina is there, and this husband and wife, etc., all of them are there. And this is in the tribal village where there's not much of corruption. So why? Because interesting dynamics of social power relationship. I wish I must have some sense of time. I was, what? How much time? Oh my God. Okay. So anyway, so this is how this was an all paper thing, and it was all controlled by Guruji. So fine. Watershed mission. I must share with you. At that time, if anybody went to MP, there were big billboards on the road of the government. And that would say, 31,000 Guruji, 3 lakh members of the members of the watershed committees, itna lakh for Falana, Panchayati Raj. They have all taken the government in their own shoulders and control. We are having the ideal Ram Raj, therefore. Because this is all people's participation. Now, no bureaucrat is working, no chief minister and political power opinion. It's the people. We have devolved this entirely to them. So, once again, a great faith about that. This was another model of people's participation. It was a state-society partnership that was entirely community-driven. And the first was elected decentralization. These 3. And again, similar story. Quickly, I must run. As you will see here, the Watershed Committee, I found out, was made of user groups, small self-help groups. This was women's thrift societies, etc. They were supposed to be made first in the watershed area. Their elected chairman would become the member of the Watershed Committee, and then Panchayat and project implementation and WT, etc. One technical people will be there to just support them. Lakhs of rupees were devolved down under that control and that great leap of faith to this group. An entirely technical program was supposed to be made by them, which required, contour building, working out trenches, working out levels, where the water will get restored, etc., so that the water table will rise, everything. And that was, ownership was given to them. These technical people were supposed to help. This is what was going on, and therefore this should be working ideally. Once again, 96% people are not aware of the watershed committees. That's what was that, 93%, etc. Same scenario. And then their committees, if you looked at it, first term elected chairman. By the way, I'll just take 1 minute to tell you. This is amazing, and I'll just, again, I can quickly run to say to you that their watershed committees were also like the same thing. There was this chairman who was never an elected person, formed these user groups, because the users groups and self-help groups were never formed earlier. They were formed only to show in paper that they existed, and there was somebody who was inside is actually his elected chairman as per the norms. But nothing existed in the villages prior to the watershed committee. That ideal spirit that there are stakeholders group who will come, and then they will see that their own farmlands, etc., are being properly, covered by the watershed, and the watershed programs are being run properly, just not there. And again, brother, sister, whatever, there was one term, there was one Sarpanch who was there, his secretary, he appointed on contract, was his own Bhatija or something. Then his rival, Gotia, you understand, the family member, he became the next Sarpanch. So, he dislodged this person. Then his wife became the Panchayat electricity. So, but he kept his devar, the same secretary continued, because he said, now I am loyal to you, just like as bureaucrats we do, the government changed and we said, now I am going to obey you. So the secretary also said, I will obey you. So the secretary continued, but the chairman's changed, etc. And this Bhabi, Bhajai and all that, this whole family's drama scene was there in that SMC and all. And, but please have a look at this one. This is one, I am really happy that I could find it. It would really pierce the veil and find out this. In that program document, in a policy document, it never had what you call provision that watershed committees will never be having sarpanch in that. They wanted to keep that people's committee away from the decentralized elected people because they will themselves again do the power thing. But there was an interesting take on it. Okay, so there will be these elected people from these various committees, and that body will finally go and get approval of Gram Sabha. Why? Because Gram Sabha is sovereign people. So they will say, all right, this is not properly done. It is this which was misutilized by, in Rewa district, the Sarpanch were powerful, and they got in paper a Gram Sabha shown, which said that, no, but we find the Sarpanch to be the greatest person who will be doing it, so we elect the Sarpanch. So through that methodology, the Sarpanch came who by rule were not supposed to be the chairman of this. But once they came, being so powerful and managing the Gram Sabhas on paper, so it was such a huge money and they were making such a lot of money out of it, that, in the process, if the second term, they again got selected, then the Watershed Committee chairman did not change because the power is in the hands of the same Sarpanch or his Lagua, as attached labor. So they will do a proxy fight between them, based on backward caste reserve people, but they will be attached to them, because of economic dependence. So every group will have his own attached person. So whenever their same group is there, that's, as I showed, it is in the same thing. But interestingly, the type 2 scenario was that when the power changed in Panchayati Raj and the new Sarpanch came, there was again no rule that the Watershed Committee's chairman would change because the Panchayati Raj election has brought in new Sarpanch. No relationship with the Sarpanch. Most interestingly, in such cases, the new Sarpanch person became the Watershed. The old Watershed chairman was thrown out. Once again, the Gram Sabha said, now we do not trust this chairman, we will have our new chairman. Amazing control of the people's participatory this thing in such, unabashed manner that even I would say to you, with the highest critique of bureaucracy in many ways, I would say that, there's such kind of a rampant command because of the power there, because who is going to question? Remember, my friends, that, in those days also, if a BDO would be corrupt, some villager who is poor also, but if he has a little ability to raise voice, will write a confidential letter to the district magistrate in postcard. And the BDOs, if he knew that the district magistrate is very honest and tough, would shudder that poor person. Hey, no, please don't send the complaint to the district magistrate. Who is the poor going to complain here when the entire thing is given to the people's group? Because the Sarpanch himself is right in the village and he has to live with that Sarpanch. Never we thought about these dimensions. Okay, it was very complex. But why do you keep repeating the same people's participatory structure as if it's a mantra of success? Why do we not learn that there is, it's not about being anti-people. It's about recognizing and respecting their question of, their problem of poverty, their problem of powerlessness. That's the one we are fighting against as a public policy people. That's the role of the state to bring the level playing field. But unless you have brought it, you transfer it in the name of this great romanticism of people's power. Whose power is the people's power? You are putting them under the hands of those people. So you have enough of these evidences. Why do you not learn to change your programs like that? Amazing, my friends, I will give you an example of, well, these were the details of all those chairmen and etc. and how they changed, this I documented. So, rural drinking water scheme. It's the latest 2009-12 document of the water, which has become a ministry because of Swachhata and all. I'm not reading this, but it's written there. There will be a village water sanitation committee. They will be the supreme body to look after every village rural drinking water supply scheme. This is as late as 2012 or 13, right? And that same mantra of, let's make this small little committees and everything will be fine. In the garb of that, the bureaucrats, the engineers, they are all running. And there's no responsibility on them. They say, well, those Gram Sabhas have signed it. Look at the kind of accountability this policy has generated. You talk about accountability. By policy we have generated among the bureaucrats this accountability. They will say, hey, but you said, the village watershed committee has to approve this, so they have approved it. So, and this is continuing after so many examples, because, that kind of ethnographic investigations also does not take place in the government. There's not enough time to kind of go and, uncover that black box to find out how Bhatijas and Bhaginas were there. The MIS reports that everything is great, but, and this Village Watershed Committee, this 2015 CAG report, number 15, just go and download that CAG report. It's a performance audit report of CAG. And I tell you, in my research, if those who are interested in public policy research, I urge you to always, apart from all other research and data, must look up if there is a CAG report concerning that there's nothing more authentic. No ministry and department can ever be able to fool them. All MIS and other reportings of the departments can, really sometimes be fudged. The CAG has the constitutional obligation to, completely demolish that and bring out the facts. 2015 CAG report says in 12 states, no village water sanitation committee existed. It never worked. Nothing. Similar stories that I found, 2003-4 in Madhya Pradesh. Adbhut ability, of our resilience. कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी, तो हम we do not change. We do not learn, but then I asked Errol, he has written so inspiringly about that we are wired to reinvent. Why are we not wired to reinvent? One more. All of you, as a citizen, I think it's not corruption. It's the biggest crime against humanity. The shelter home thing which happened in Muzaffarpur in Bihar, and which I know will, is in many states will be there. I urge you, those who are scholars, to go and just do one thing. I looked at the policy document of the Government of India, because of my interest now that I'm out, and I then, found out that Supreme Court, Justice Lokur, who just resigned, there was this PIL filed in his court about, old age, widow homes and etc. That 2007 PIL, for years it was continuing, and that brought into ambit about reforming the shelter homes. And finally Supreme Court ordered that there should be a committee which should go into and collect, and there were hundreds of reports filed in the Supreme Court as to this problem and that problem and this horrible thing happening, and these are the reform suggestions. And these reports, then the Supreme Court said, we cannot really collate them, so there should be a wonderful committee made of, I'm forgetting, you can see all that, which is there. All the decisions of every day I studied, which is there on the Supreme Court website. This is a fantastic thing which has happened is now because of these, policies you have this. And in that, I'm saying that the committee report, etc., which was brought in, I just copied the. Look at the knowledge base about reforms in shelter home that was required and the crisis deepening. Do you see these references? They're all in that report submitted to the Supreme Court in compliance of it. Hundreds of studies by National Women's Commissions, Ministry of Child and Welfare, and many things, and all of them then went into making an entire agenda of action of reform. And the Supreme Court then ordered that all the states must respond to this entire agenda of action. This was going on from 2009 till date. And just as at this time, as Bihar government as well as many other states were responding to the Supreme Court directions of reform as per the agenda of action, this shelter home was also happening on its own. It is an amazing puzzle that how the system cannot be even activated when this whole issue is under consideration of Supreme Court, and you are getting directives of Supreme Court, you are being forced to look into, you have so many reports to say that this is the way you should do the social audit, this is the way you must talk to the girls who are there independently, not before the authorities. All that is there. I cannot really, because of this. So amazing disjunct between the knowledge production and the policy. It was just not changing. The states were responding to that reform, but they were not taking clues from that to immediately do proactively the reforms there. The social audit direction, the Bihar government and others who must have, you might have read that they made a claim that, we are the ones who did the social audit first. Supreme Court made an order. You know what? This is amazing and classic and all that. I said to you that, in that entire agenda of action made on the basis of collating all these reports of scholars like you, when the Supreme Court studied that agenda of action, by their own pen, the bench, Justice Lokur and others, added in the column, suggestion by Supreme Court, social audit. It is by Supreme Court's own addition that it became the frame of the reform framework. And it is, yes, Bihar government, for some reason, I don't know, before actually it was, the policy was changed as the Government of India, and the social audit para was brought in as a compliance. If you read the Government of India policy document, you will say, in compliance of the Supreme Court instruction, para so and so has been changed, and the inclusion is that you must do a social audit. So, but there was enough time to do that. Why at that late stage, and why so many years when this all human crimes were going on, is something which is a great puzzle. Again, the question which I have raised, and which is a sub-questions are, why do we learn, why do we not bring in the knowledge into the making of the policy which is available and foreseeable? Why do we not learn on the way? Why we are wired to reinvent? Why this kind of an absolutely bizarre and puzzling disjunct between the knowledge production at one hand and the same agency is responding to the knowledge production and yet not bringing it into application for the policy changes? Is some more over there. Okay, and here are the great education experts. I will just show you this thing. Here is a fantastic database. I must claim that I have not gone into depth to see if there are correlations, and one can understand and explain this. That's a part of my, as I said, it's a work in progress. Here is a data from 1952 onwards, amazingly respectable commissions and committees on educational reforms that have been made in this country. And all of you and IIM's scholars would perhaps know much better this area than any other area. But of course, this is more focused on primary, but many of them are also about higher education, etc. So, the Secondary Education Commission, 1952 onwards, 64, 66, Kothari Commission, and all of this. And look at those documents. There are issues about teachers' quality, about pedagogy, about how the education system or classroom things should be changed, apart from universal access to education by gender equality and everything. A lot of things will be there. I have to do that, but I'm sure there will be, because by definition that the brief which is there, which is given there, right? Oh, one more, 2009, scheme of inclusive education, disabled, this and that. And take the data, just as this longitudinal data of the most respectable non-government agency, which the government also recognizes, the only one. Now they have started, the government so late as to continuous assessment about the learning, but it's the ACER, the Pratham organization that And look at this data. From 2005 to 2012, all districts covered, so many schools covered, so many children covered. It's a huge sample on which they work. There's a huge discussion about the methodology. And district surveys, villages surveys, this is Bihar thing. It's all India, it's Bihar. Okay? And 2006 to 2014, I tabulated this from their report. Amazing. When there were hardly any commission reports, the learning abilities, whether it was reading or mathematics, etc., up 48%, fifth class did it, third class, class 3 work, and the class 3 students did it, class 1 work, 48%. The more we brought the knowledge, the great result. This is one area which I tell you in public policy making, the kind of knowledge production which has happened here, NUPA, NEEP, NCRT, etc. Always, every time, new syllabus, what not, what experiments, all happening, all those commissions. And this is going down from 48. This was children in standard 3 who can read at least standard 1, 2006 to 2003, 48 to 40%. Bihar, 54 to 31%. Children in standard 3 who can read at least standard 1 text by school type. School type is private schools, they're more, then again. So, all that I'm saying to you, arithmetic level. Look at 42 going to 25. Look at, 42 going to 26. Somebody must question why this kind of a disjunct scenario. And Is it that there's a deficit in knowledge, like the IRDP thing, or is there a knowledge which doesn't transmit to the policy making? What? But this is, how do you, at the face value, should be able to kind of, get some certain sense. But I just showed you, again, when I'm dealing with this question of knowledge versus, the gulf between, as I call it, analytics and practice. The second question, people, why do we not seem to learn from the ground realities? Why are not we well wired to this? Is there a culture of assumption that results are bound to follow? Just as in IRDP, gave them this milch animal, hugely designed program. This is the wonderful NABARD economics. Truly, really, people didn't know, and they believed that if I did it, it must result into the poverty being eradicated. But that's a small part of the story. The other one, is there an inbuilt structural constraint to learning from within the system? There's a huge issue, I tell you from my own experiences. I can tell you, I shared with Professor Chand once, just give me 1 minute to tell you one interesting thing. In District Magistrate Rohtas, Sasaram district, when the monthly revenue reports came before me, I found that, many years before the ceiling, you are aware of the land ceiling laws, and, surplus land ceilings of the rural landlords, etc., were taken under the Section 16 and all, and distributed to the poor landless people. There's a big policy of the government, very progressive policy at that time. There's a huge loopholes in the law. The landlords were able to kind of suppress their land holdings, or show it by various ways to avoid the land ceiling, and yet lakhs of acres were finally taken. So when the law was, and I was as a district magistrate and as SDOs, etc., we were all involved in implement actually judicial proceeding of that. So every step I used to go in depth, what are the law, what are the steps, where the huge writ petitions, huge appeals, everything will be kind of a standoff, etc. Years and years one proceeding will take place. And finally under Section 45B, when after all these appeals, all the intervention by the landlords to kind of derail it, finally managed to get at least even 5 acres or 10 acres land, and 45B notification was issued. This is the surplus ceiling land, finally notified under this section. That's the one which was distributed to the red card holders, as we used to call them, the poor scheduled caste people, or whoever was eligible under the policy. The report came, so much of land, so much ceiling land, so much distributed, so many beneficiaries, so much land, surplus, acquired under Section 45B, but not distributed because of stay by the High Court. That column I saw, and I found that for years this particular column reporting was there, going on. I just looked out in the old reports and files, and I found, every month and every year, this was coming out. 900 acres, total of the district, stay. Just raised one single question. I said, but how come after the 45B, when all the stage of High Court and Supreme Court and appeals is over, and 45B notification issued, what is that need this is stay? And this was figure. So I asked my circle officer, so what is this stay now? How can it be? What is the stay? Which is, sir, this is how the Indian governance, I tell you, in general works. Sir, ऐसे ही report आता था पहले से. My administrative officers told me, sir, ऐसे ही था इसलिए हम resign कर दिए. So you never looked at as to how this stays there? नहीं sir, तो पिछला 5 साल से ऐसे ही report आ रहा है. So I said, I'm nothing doing. What you do is, it's not figure. I'm not going to go by figure. List out the landlord's name, whose whatever X amount under the 900 acres is the one which is being called as a stayed. List it out, give them a notice, say you bring a copy of the stay order. Also give it an affidavit that the stay is still live in the High Court. If you give a false affidavit, the district magistrate will prosecute you and send you to jail. And just this small effort, and the notices were sent to all X number of landlords whose total money, land which was being said, after so much of surplus, this 900 acres was being said to be not under stay. 95%, I remember, there was no feedback. The landlords never came to challenge or show any evidence of the stay order. They were falsely done for many years. And there was just went on as an inertia without no mischief by these officers at that stage. In the initial stage, a clerk in the register would take some money from the landlord, put a small line there. I checked up all those. High Court says stay. There's not even a mention of CWJC number. And that continued after that as an inertia of the government system. It is a structural constraint of knowing something. So, the mining thing, I went into and sat in the mines, of the Rohtas, talked to the poor laborers, find out that, every year the tender will take place, 10% increase will be there, first class, we are getting good revenue, etc. And when I just talked to the laborers, how many tractors are filled from this site, what is the cost of that tractor, sand and etc., I find X amount, 1,500 times was the revenue which was being generated there. Just change that operation. I'm not saying it from my any appreciation. I'm just raising you a fundamental question as to why that questioning is not happening, even if there is no wrong motive. And I just change this, no tender, the ownership to the laborers, and train them to simply check how many trucks came, so therefore each one can check, and no cooperative member will loot them away. 700% increase in the revenues to the government, double the wages to the laborers. That's all data which is not, we cannot fudge because these are amount financial, which is all tested. I got some appreciation for that, that's a different thing, but the mining lobby were quite against me. But these questions are simple. Is this 10% rise correct? Is this the only capacity of revenue at the site? Can we go and find out this? That knowing thing, which is otherwise, is a headache. Why should we, it's a 10% increase, fine, that's great. But that little knowledge can change, such a thing. Is there an inbuilt structural constant? All right. Then, is there a culture of silence? The time is limited, but I'll tell you about the watershed. When I was doing that research in the village of Neemach in Madhya Pradesh, there, I was talking to the Sarpanch. The villagers were there in his courtyard room, and there I was sitting. Of course, my introduction was only that I'm a LSE student or whatever. And they were saying, oh, no, it's not worked well, there's no water, the drains or whatever is all broken. And that villager was telling me about the watershed, the scheme that I talked about. A minister came there, that was 2003 election. You should remember the Congress got defeated very badly, Honorable Digvijay Singh. And so his minister came, he was from that area, perhaps an impromptu meeting in the village. He gave some little bhashan, and Sarpanch ran outside, quickly assembled few villagers, there was a little bhashan, and then the minister came inside for little chai nashta at the Sarpanch's place. I was sitting alone because Sarpanch told me, you wait, the minister has come, I'll just go and manage a small meeting and come back. So he brought him also for a little cup of tea or whatever. So he saw me and said, who are you? I said, I'm LSE. Oh, at the moment he heard LSE, chaste English. I think he must have some background. He started speaking with me, great chaste English. I said, what are you doing? I said, I'm studying Watershed. And and then he said, what a great program we have done, It's a wonderful thing that you're doing, you're studying all that, etc. So, and then at that time the villagers also came. And that villager who was telling me before that the realities of Watershed scheme was standing in front of me and in front of the minister now. And he just turned, and because of that area, he must have known or something like that. He said, he took his name maybe, I don't remember. He said, he just batao to inko, ki kaisa hum log ka watershed chala. That villager spontaneously said, I've recorded this. It said, I couldn't have recorded a tape recorder, this thing. He spontaneously, told him, sir, itna bada tomato hum log ugaye hain, sir. I said 1 minute before he was saying everything is finished and and then after that, is there a culture of silence? We want to hear this. This is a huge issue that we want to hear, and therefore everything is fine. When I was district master at Bhojpur, trust me, there was this Bhojpuri thing. I don't know how many people understand, but I came to know, and I thought initially as my first district, so I partly believed. I said, sir, Rauba ani ha ta ajor bhoil ha, na to andhere rahe. Now that you have come, it is now all light. Otherwise, there was all darkness. And I thought, this was, I was working so hard, and people, actually, so there's and that's the place where when I was transferred, there was a massive people's movement, etc. That was reported by Kuldeep Nair and others in papers in Sunday. So, I was, I worked hard, so people must be telling this. When I left that district, after that, premature this thing. I came to know that the same dialogue used to be said for every district magistrate who had preceded me and everyone which came later, even if he was a great corrupt man. They lied. So, this scenario, you can't know, you can never know from your field, what's really happening. And so, oh, sorry. Oh, what's, can the brain know what the hands are doing? High transaction cost with it. Anyway, the third critical, I'll quickly run and finish it, because do we understand the vast and apparently invisible microstate of India? I wish I had a little time to say maybe during the discussion, but quickly, lot of negative things about it. I do not disagree with many of the things that the petty bureaucrats and others are doing, huge corruption, etc. But I said some of these are kind of because of the problem that we have not shaped the policy, or we do not have that kind of learning ability. So there is things which keep getting distorted. But these thousands and thousands of, please let me say, Professor Chan, just one, and I'll finish, not run the rest things, that thousands and thousands of, how many people are there in IAS? 5,000. Do you know, my friends, that is there an authentic database in India about how many of the Panchayat Sevaks and ANMs and small staffs are there in the country? No database. All those whom we make the most responsible for doing the bad things, we simply just don't know them. And here is one that I came to know. During my research of Cambridge, Bihar, Bengal, went into that same Ara district, and I was moving into this most volatile block, which was my ethnographic research area, Sahar, and there I found that, the landlord, higher caste, and the Naxalites, so-called Naxalites, they were loggerheads at each other. They would cut their throats. There was so much of distrust. Somehow in the ethnographic discussion, a talk came about the law and order and police, and there was a name which came up, Harishchandra Paswan. Harishchandra Paswan was the ex-Thana in charge of that place. And the landlord said, oh, he's God. He does justice. So I said, fine. But I was surprised that, normally he was from the lower caste. So he would say, went to the Tola where Naxalites, these so-called Naxalites would literally be, whatever these people will say, they are so much of distrust that they will say against. When I talked to them, again the talk came of the Thana. Oh, Harishchandra Paswan, Uto Bhagwan the. He did justice. Everywhere in the villages I went, I was so deeply moved. I located that officer, youngest officer, sub-inspector. He was in one of the thanas. I went to meet him, took a tape, his tape is with me. And I just asked him, how is that you have earned this reputation which many IAS officials cannot have, thus impartiality, under so much of pressure? And of course his answer, I thought he would give me some intellectual answer. These are some of these people who work like that only in the field. And he just told me, sir, Babuji humko kahte ki yahi dharma hai. This is the dharma. This is how you work. A deep internalization of that kind of value is very difficult to find out in a government system, You cannot really base your public policy model on that. But what I am trying to hint at is that do we know Harishchandra Paswan? Hundreds of such people, not all of them are corrupt, are there who are doing their duty despite being. You don't recognize them. You do not give them the honor. You do not encourage them. You do not see their conditions. All these IIMs have this great teachings on HR, and the HRs have great wings in all the corporate sectors. Have you ever found out what is the HR in government of India, government sectors? What happens to these 2 crores of these kind of staff are there all over the country? Do we know them except a number? I don't even know my Bihar Administrative Service officer, which are class 2 officers. When I wanted to put somebody in Panchayati Raj who has known the rural areas, rural development diplomas, there was no database in the Bihar government to know even their qualifications. So that's another big issue that question must be raised. Okay. And finally, the fourth critical question is about, do we realize that the answers to these fundamental questions are in themselves predicated upon a deeper, more foundational question, possibly the first order question of re-establishing the overriding importance of ethos and elan of the public service. If you don't have a pride in this service, it will be very difficult to kind of re-establish that kind of a public service and public policy working. If you have generally have kind of a distrust that everything is horrible and corrupt. You have to get that, and that's a huge task. How do you do this? There's some thoughts that I have, but I will not, I'll stop here, and I really thank you very much for your patience. Thank you so much, and please, that's all.
Any questions?
I'd like to share something, if you
Ji.
allow me to share it from there.
Yeah,
But
please.
question.
Any question? You,
Brief.
I will just share something. That is,
please ask him the question.
No, but just make it.
well, I'm from Sikar, that is Rajasthan, and I have come down to listen to this talk only. And I have been working in the areas what he talked about. So I wanted to share for 2 minutes or 3 minutes the real life what happened.
question?
I have a question to the fraternity. So the question will have only the context. Allow me a minute, just a minute.
Others should have. Go ahead. Just make it
In
brief.
Rajasthan, most of the teachers got selected this year and the last year. They had their scores in minus. A student, a teacher who is going to teach, his score in examination is minus 17, and now he teaches physics. So I want to make a request to the academia and the student fraternity. We need to raise these questions. After all, how can we trust those teachers who have minus 17 in physics and now they are going to teach our generation? So that is the question, where can we see the policy making and policy implementation when teachers go to the school and they are teaching it. My son writes bhara in negative direction rather than, from the right corner, he writes it differently. So I have to understand, what shall I do with my son? So this is a bigger question. And if anybody will look at the data provided by NIC, then you will have only the lustrous image. But the reality is, India is receding in a lackluster, in paradigm, I would rather put it that way.
Yeah.
And very
Thank you.
soon,
Any
that
other
is the
question?
This is, do we really realize it? I hope you realize and propagate this talk and debate further.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions to Mr. Srivastava?
Question, comments from faculty, from friends, and I really will be grateful. Because that's
Yeah. Ashok? There's one question. Yes.
Sometimes surprised that this kind of talks happening all around. So I am also from revenue service doing PhD.
Oh.
So what happens that we talked a lot about this. We kind of this question which comes at the hand that we need to explore for this and that. And we have examples from other streams, and we have a lot of many people who are actually dealing with what to add some value to the public life. The thing is that why reform process, bureaucratic reform process, like administrative reform commissions are coming, committees are coming, why it is not kicking off in the government? Why it is always just discussed and then put back into back burners? I think your experience can tell something.
now, can we take one or two after that?
Okay. Any other question?
1, 2, 3 questions or whatever.
Yes, Swati.
So, all these questions are relevant, and
Yes.
as a researcher, I want to answer all these questions. But how open are government institutions to researchers? Because I have always, like my dad and mom also are government servants. Even they say no access to our institute. You cannot interview any of our people. So I'm not really sure if bureaucrats and institutions are open for researchers to kind of ask these questions.
Okay.
So access to bureaucracy.
Okay. Good. Very important. I'll respond to this question first, and then I'll come to yours. It's a huge barrier. The barrier is also because there's a general, there's a problem of also trust there, whether the researcher will misutilize the information, what will he do or not, etc. I had a little advantage, I must say to you, to go into such depth and try and get this kind of information, which I'm sure it will be very difficult for you to get in the normal circumstances, because, I was a part of this, and this is general, as you know, you are they will trust that, he's not going to misuse. But having said this, You know, my co-scholar, Stuart Corbridge, I mean, my co-author, sorry, who we wrote that book together along with others. When he was doing the PhD in Cambridge, as a young student, he came to India and he was doing a research, you know, serious Jharkhand issue research, which required a lot of things into the government. He lived in Bero blog, this is one blog. He showed me that blog where the tribal women gave him a place to live. He did this huge hard work to earn the trust of the villagers. Also, when he went to the senior officials, obviously he wouldn't have got all that he wanted. But, you know, persistent efforts and a trust building that I've just come for as a researcher. Trust me, there will be complete confidentiality which will be maintained. We are going to be penalized so seriously in our career will be over as a researcher in academic institutions if we do not maintain the confidentiality. I took a lot of time to build up even myself the trust among the villagers that, you know, this. So all that will not get you the ideal thing, but some of the data and information will come in too. Gone are the days. I tell you the kind of data that I mean, look at the Supreme Court decisions which are available date-wise. Look at the, you know, entire reports which are there on the websites of those days when, you know, earlier, when we were trying to get this kind of information, of course, whatever little advantage, even then it was so difficult. You know, I didn't show you a data, thousands of reports which were manually there about the employment assurance scheme. I sat in the assistant's office, dusted off this document, took the photocopies, and you know, typed it, and etc. It's all now available by a click of mouse. So things have changed. You should not be so worried. You will get it, you know. But I'm surprised why your dad is saying that you will not be very accessible to it. You must let me meet him. Maybe I will motivate him.
Maybe I should ask you that.
And second, you know, the point that you're saying, this is precisely the issues that I'm raising, that, you know, that why that commission's report, etc., are not really gelling, or, you know, in some ways not getting kind of linked in the day-to-day process of policy making. I would have shown you something here towards the end, you know, UK government's work, what works and what doesn't work. The UK government, where we will think they are, you know, Cambridge and this thing, they found this, remember that the problem of a dysfunctionality between the analytics and practice is just not unique to India. You will be amazed that I have looked at the works where same language that you will hear the bureaucrats saying sometimes, no, but you know, this is all academics, this doesn't work, you know, this way, the working is very different, so these people come and give a lot of big data and research articles, and you know, this is not the reality, how the things work, so they will not listen to it, etc. Can you imagine that in US, I wish I could have shared that article, exactly the same language. No, but this is all academics, you know, this is all research. And, you know, the researcher will have the same kind of reaction to him. No, but, you know, these people are just totally not interested in knowing or anything or improving because they have a vested interest in continuing this. This is a huge distrust. But there is a certain amount of, you know, problem there. No sincere bureaucrat, including, I tell you, that I told you in the initial remarks that I know if I would ever become the CM, I'll make this law that, you know, go and do a research, because that's the kind of humility as well as learning which is so required for doing the public policy. And yet I will myself, if the knowledge, even if it's original, is given to me in a 100-page document with 200 references and this thing, I'll say, जिंदा रहना है, कुछ करना है समय में, इतना पढ़ के तब समझेंगे. Then I will find out what is this great knowledge there which I will utilize. By the time I will die, or the government will throw and say he is a researcher, he is not a doer. So how do you merge this time, discount factor of time, short time, summary of it, in such language that it can go? UK government found a way. 7 What Work Center has been evolved by the UK government, its own cabinet, which is intermediary between academic institution and policy making. They take out the policy, academic work, translate into a simple, this thing, do a very trust building, and they are a part of the government also, some of the retired people, etc. They disseminate that, you know, with the actual serving bureaucrats in simple manner, continuous, you know, interactions with them, so that, they start developing certain sense about the most critical elements quickly than, going through the massive documents and reports. So we will have to devise that kind of intermediary linkage scenario. So that was.
That is quite correct. Even I think the second administrative reform commission report also indicates this. A think tank like structure
Things,
should emerge.
yeah, sure.
But how they emerge or what is the thinking method, that is kind of understood.
We are going to do it from the JSW School of Public Policy. That will be the first What Works Center in India.
Any response to the earlier question about the mismatch between qualifications and people who get selected? Is that creating a problem?
No, there is in this world of, how knowledge and public policy making should be there, and there is a new domain which is called, there are wicked problems. This is a scholarly word, the wicked problems. They're not amenable to solution. You can, oh my God, this is a horrible problem, etc. Climate change is a serious issue. You cannot easily kind of bring out a policy where everybody will be fair. So there are some serious dimensions of it. I was making it a lighter vein. I've not applied the mind to the fact that the 112,000 teachers which were recruited in Bihar with huge faith in the decentralized Panchayati Raj body. The going rate at that time was 60,000 rupees.
That is the problem.
And the people who came, official announcement by the Minister of Education said that 30,000 of them have been found to have entered with forged certificates. It's an interesting thing that those have continued even till now, and they will be thrown out. And there were videos, numbers of videos that said they cannot write even Sunday and etc. Now, when they have come as a contract teacher of Panchayat, and with so great a people's control, what has happened is that over years, which is what Professor Yamini Ayer's work was reporting, that they start unionizing, they start becoming the government servant. Now, all the Bihar teachers, as in every state, this is the way they were recruited, this is the kind of qualification they had, this is the incapacity they had. They have all, from a 5-year contract, they have gone up to 60 years contract. Renewable after every 5 years, but it will automatically be renewed, and your pay raises will take place, and now you will have a pension also, but you are a contract teacher. Fantastic concept of, government servant, and so they are all there. So as a result, this is a huge area. You cannot throw them out. Now, how do you turn them into really, first of all, learning themselves? The basic learning to teach them is a big challenge, it's a wicked problem. So we'll have to sit down and think about it.
That's
but I wasn't
wicked
going
problem. Yours is a wicked problem. So anyway, thank you very much. I don't think our seminars have lasted this long. So maybe that's a tribute to the patience of the audience here. Thank you very much for coming.
But I thought you would also thank me that I at least held them for some longer time. Only the patience or my ability to hold them for longer.
That is the last. So thank you for coming and spending time with us here. Especially I would thank our SAL Institute students for making it here. So finally I'll leave it to Anish to thank you for the lecture.
So thank you so much for coming over. We've been expecting you to come over and enlighten our students. We have a course called Government Systems and Policy Processes, and we keep talking about all the theoretical models that should work and should be done. But then this is a fantastic enlightenment about when this mapping happens from gray matter to dark matter, how things get lost in translation. So thank you so much. I'm sure everyone enjoyed, and yeah, thank you so much.
So grateful, really truly thankful for your patience and being here, because the idea was to raise certain issues, to have a continuous thought and deliberation also that will help the School of Public Policy to kind of take a further shape. So maybe this is the beginning of a thought process which we will together kind of take in advance, and that you gave this opportunity. I will never forget it. I'm so grateful to them for that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.